Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. This is an educational channel. We generally take a look at great theories of everything, ancient and modern, and try to dice them up and figure out how to best use these things. Today is our 573rd video on the reciprocal system of theory from Dewey B. Larson, otherwise known as the universe of motion. Larson is one of few scientists who have proposed a cosmology based upon motion, not matter, not energy, but motion. And Larson put together his two fundamental postulates in 1959, and then from those postulates deduced a theoretical universe, and then compared his theoretical universe with the empirical universe of modern science in books on chemistry and astronomy and physics. But he also has some books on other subjects, such as metaphysics, including philosophy, religion, psychology, biology, and he has two books on economics. We're taking a look at one of those economics books today called The Road to Permanent Prosperity, and we are in chapter 22 of that book called Dealing with Recessions. Little 40% of the way through that chapter. I'm going to get that started right now, but before I do, just if you'd like to get a little bit more detail on the reciprocal system itself, watch any of my first 474 videos on the subject. I go into the topic a little bit more in those videos. All of them are a little bit different, so you can try many of them. And then if you'd like to start this book at the top, go back about 6-7 weeks and start with chapter 1. But if you'd like to just hang on and see if you can figure it out from here, you may be able to, because Larson explains himself, pretty well. Kind of repeats his main themes. And so you might be able to get an idea. Now, when he's talking about dealing with recessions, he has a proposal for dealing with recessions that he contends is different than what's been arrived at before, but has elements of things that have been done before. And he uses many examples of different things that methods that have been attempted before. Then he's going to kind of explain himself. But so we are up to a section here called script. So this is where he's going to explain what script is and how it was used and how it's, some aspects of script is going to be in his proposal, presumably. The schemes involving the use of substitute money or scrip that crop up in every depression or serious recession illustrate the need for careful analysis of economic proposals. To those who see only their superficial aspects and do not inquire too closely into the validity of the claims made by their sponsors, these hybrid concoctions may seem somewhat attractive. Even prominent economists like Keynes and Irving Fisher, for example, have failed to see through the camouflage that have endorsed some such schemes. But when these ingenious products are broken down into their component parts, and each part is analyzed separately, all semblance of merit disappears. On dissecting any one of the script plans, we find that it has three distinct characteristics. 1, it provides a limited substitute for legal currency. 2, it is a means of borrowing money for the purposes contemplated in the plan. And 3, it is a method of taxation to repay the borrowed funds. There are numerous versions of the general scheme, but they are all basically alike, and for the present analysis, we can take the most popular version, the so-called self-liquidating scrip. Looking first at item 1, it is evident that the scrip is a very inferior currency. If it is not made legal tender, it will not be generally accepted. If it is made legal tender, it will drive good money into hiding, in accordance with the principle that the economists call Gresham's law. Turning to item 2, the first scrip issued represents the equivalent of borrowing by the issuing agency, some governmental body, presumably. As soon as the redemption feature comes into play, however, the borrowings are offset by the redemption payments, and soon a balance is reached, whereupon the credit expansion effect terminates. So far as the inflation of the pure level by government borrowing may have merit, a matter that will be discussed later, this scrip scheme is an inefficient way of handling the transaction. As to item number 3, the plan constitutes a tax on those who accept the scrip in business dealings. The theory behind the program is that such transactions constitute additional business for those affected, and in view of the lower cost of handling incremental business, they can well afford to pay the cost of the plan in order to get the additional volume. But when we examine the situation mathematically, we find that there cannot be any additional volume of business originating from the use of the scrip. While those who are using scrip are adding to the amount of money purchasing power flowing to the markets, the purchasing power of those who pay the transaction taxes is being curtailed by exactly the same amount. And except for a small inflationary effect when the plan first goes into operation, the net result is 0. If any one firm gains business, some other firm must suffer an equivalent loss. The ingenious inventors of the scrip plan have overlooked the fact that even if the owners of the various enterprises that handle the scrip stand the loss themselves and do not pass it on to their customers, which is unlikely, payments for the services of capital, profits, interest, etc., constitute purchasing power in exactly the same manner that wages do. And we cannot add to the total purchasing power by building up one component at the expense of the other. Furthermore, the incidence of the tax resulting from the use of this scrip is extremely inequitable. If there is any increase in demand for some specific product, either by operation of the inflationary aspect of the plan, which is effective in the early stages before redemption begins, or by a shift of demand from one type of goods to another, the resultant benefit from higher prices or greater volume accrues only to those who participate in the production of the favored goods, whereas the cost is borne only by those who handle the scrip. Summarizing, scrip is a very poor substitute for money, a decidedly inferior method of government borrowing, an extremely inequitable method of taxation, and it completely fails to accomplish its intended purpose. Putting all of these items together, we have a typical economic patent medicine. This section is called price manipulation. Since it is clear to everyone that prices play an important role in the operation of the economic mechanism, it is only natural that restoration of prosperity by means of price manipulation should be among the measures suggested. However, the uncertain ground on which these proposals rest is well brought out by the fact that the advocates of price changes are divided on the question as to whether the modification should be upward or downward. One school of thought suggests price increases when recession is threatened, on the theory that higher prices will stimulate replenishment of inventories in anticipation of still further increases. This program, which was actually tried out without any success in the 1930 downswing, not only depends on creating a false illusion as to the general trend of prices, a futile effort, but also collides with the fact that higher prices for some items necessitate a reduction in the prices of some other items, inasmuch as the general price level cannot be altered by the producer's price policies. The price increase program therefore accomplishes nothing. The other larger school of thought advocates price reductions as a means of stimulating consumer buying. This is another of the places where the limitations of the supply and demand approach to economic problems causes orthodox economic thought to go astray. It is assumed that price reductions will increase demand, whereupon producers will step up production to adjust the supply to the higher demand, thus leading to a general improvement in economic conditions. The validity of this theory is entirely dependent on the availability of sufficient purchasing power to buy a greater volume of goods. In the case of any single item, this requirement is met, as purchasing power can be diverted from other uses in sufficient quantities. But extending the theory to the system as a whole, as the economists of the price reduction school do, is altogether unwarranted, for here the available purchasing power is definitely limited. It is a finite quantity to begin with, and, as was brought out in the previous discussion of this point, reduction of prices cuts total money purchasing power in a corresponding degree, and the ability of the consuming public to buy goods is not altered by the price change. The only significant effect of the action is to transfer a certain amount of purchasing power from one group to another. Okay, this section is called wage manipulation. The same divergence of opinion that is so striking in the proposals for action with respect to prices is equally in evidence in ideas as to what should be done about wages when depression threatens. The labor unions and those who share their viewpoint advocate raising wages on the theory that this increases purchasing power and tends to relieve the inadequacy of consumer demand. Businessmen, on the other hand, generally contend that wage reductions are essential under depressed conditions to enable the productive enterprises to continue operation. Most economists are reluctant to take the unpopular side of this argument and recommend wage decreases. But there is quite general agreement in economic circles that wage increases under depression conditions are not advisable. And it is conceded that the current prevailing economic theories lead to the conclusion that excessively high wages cause unemployment. A particularly interesting point is that many of those who are positive in their assertions as to the futility of general wage increases as an anti-depression measure are at the same time advocating general price reductions as the royal road to prosperity. For example, studies by the economists of the Brookings Institution summarized in a volume entitled Income and Economic Progress lay great stress on the desirability of price reductions, and similar contentions can be found throughout economic literature. But the truth is that these two actions are simply alternative ways of doing the same thing, changing the money labels in the markets. Price juggling makes the initial change in the goods market, but the principles developed in the preceding pages show that the production market price must conform. Wage juggling affects the production market first, but the goods market must necessarily conform, and the ultimate result is therefore exactly the same. Here, then, we have a substantial segment of the economic profession looking at a proposed action from one side and condemning it, then viewing the same thing from the other side and approving it. The explanation for this inconsistency is that same lack of understanding of the true relation of the production market to the general operation of the economic system, which was the subject of comment in Chapter 15, together with a sociological prejudice against price increases based on erroneous assumptions as to the ability of business firms to control prices and to benefit from that control. When the nature of the interconnection between the various parts of the economic mechanism is clarified, it becomes evident that any change in the price level in either of the markets must inevitably be followed by a corresponding change in the other. The net result of an arbitrary modification, one not required by market forces, of either prices or wages will simply be a new equilibrium at a different price level, leaving the general economic situation just where it was. Under some conditions, wage flexibility has a beneficial effect on employment. But this present discussion is concerned only with the stabilization problem. That is, with the elimination of the cycle of booms and depressions. The impact on employment is discussed at length in The Road to Full Employment, which is Larson's other book on economics. The finding of the investigation being reported in this work is that wage and price manipulation have no effect on the business cycle. This is another of the many places where it is essential to recognize that employment and business stability are two separate and distinct issues that require altogether different treatment. The same point is again encountered when we begin consideration of the next item on our list, the use of public expenditures to prime the pump in a depression. And so this section is called pump priming. Here is an outstanding example of an economic experiment that ended in failure because it was based on erroneous theoretical premises. The pump priming theory that Keynes and his associates persuaded the Roosevelt administration to adopt as the principal means of getting the United States out of the Great Depression postulates that a relatively small increase in expenditures on public projects will set regenerative forces in motion, which will ultimately result in a vastly greater increase in business activity. As ordinarily explained, the original pump priming expenditure increases the money available for consumer spending. This spending causes producers to increase production to replenish their stocks. The stepped-up production increases employment, which gives rise to a further increase in purchasing power, leading to a further widening of production, further gains in employment, and so on ad infinitum. The pump priming enthusiasts recognize that there must be some kind of leakages from the process. Otherwise, business once primed would never stop expanding as long as the necessary labor is available. They have therefore made some estimates as to how much the original expenditure would be multiplied before the beneficial effect on business activity would wear itself out. Keynes argued in the prospectus that convinced the administration in Washington that the multiplier would not be much less than 5 in an economy such as that of the United States. But to the dismay of the pump primers, the multiplier failed to multiply. The feverish printing from 1932 until the situation was changed by the approach of World War II not only failed to start the pump, but contributed materially toward demoralizing the business already existing. There could hardly be a more conclusive demonstration of the fact that pump priming is not a cure for depressions. Actually, the pump priming theory, so far as its application to a depression is concerned, is a compound fallacy. Not only is there no such thing as a multiplier, a self-reinforcing increase in business activity and employment in response to the priming, but even if there were, this would not contribute anything toward overcoming the depression, as the essence of the depression is not unemployment, even though this is the most painful symptom. The depression is due to the draining of money purchasing power out of the current stream and into the reservoirs, and it cannot be overcome until this flow is reversed. Any increase in production that may take place adds equally to the volume of goods and the volume of purchasing power, and does nothing toward correcting the money purchasing power unbalance, which causes the price decrease that is the basic feature of the depression. Unemployment can be alleviated by overcoming the depression, but it can be fully eliminated only by employment measures. A depression can be halted only by anti-inflationary measures. There is no all-purpose remedy that will do both jobs. This section is called Subsidizing Consumption. Subsidies have been so misused in many cases and so bitterly embroiled in controversy in others that the word has fallen into disrepute, and we now hear much of aid, benefits, and adjustments, and little of subsidies. But all of these are simply subsidies dressed in new clothes to mislead the casual observer. The truth is that subsidies are perfectly legitimate in their proper place and serve a useful and important purpose, but all too often they are advocated and sometimes put into effect on the strength of anticipated results that do not and cannot materialize. This is especially true of consumer subsidies. Proposals for consumer subsidies, aside from those that are specifically designed for no other purpose than to provide additional income for special categories of individuals, are usually based on the idea that the purchasing power available to the consumers is not sufficient to buy the full production of the economy, and that the economic well-being of the nation would be improved if additional purchasing power were created and placed in the hands of consumers. There are many variations of these subsidy schemes, some of which call for operating through the agency of the retailers. Others involve preferential treatment for special groups, and still others call for gifts or loans to all consumers. An interesting example of the latter is the social credit plan, which was actually approved. Ouch. I'm sorry, but my computer just died. And right in the middle of a sentence. This is a 14-year-old computer, and sometimes it just overheats. And it's kind of warm in here. It's very warm in here. The air conditioner is not terribly effective. And I'm doing this video during the daytime. Usually I do it at night. So I think what we're going to do is just call it a day. And we will get back, and hopefully my computer will you know, be there for me tomorrow, and we will finish this chapter then. Meanwhile, have a great day.